What would you do if I told you that the most feared weapon in World War II wasn't forged in a factory or dropped from a plane, but born in the blood of men who carried the hunting instincts of their ancestors like a loaded gun? Men who could track you by scent alone across miles of frozen ground. Men who moved through darkness as if they owned it. Men who made hardened SS officers beg for mercy in languages they didn't even speak. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about a psychological weapon so terrifying that the German High Command offered bounties for these soldiers' heads, and some Nazi officers chose to eat a bullet rather than face capture by warriors they believed had stepped straight out of nightmare. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me right now. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know what corner of the world is hearing this story tonight. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button because these are the stories they don't teach in school, the histories that powerful institutions have tried to bury, and your subscription is what keeps us digging them up. The year is 1942. The United States military has a problem. They need battlefield communications that the enemy cannot intercept or decode. The solution seems simple. Use Native American languages. The Navajo get most of the credit in history books. But there was another program, one that went far beyond simple code talking, one that the military would later wish they had never started. The Comanche language, with its tonal complexity and complete unfamiliarity to European ears, was perfect for encrypted communications. But when Comanche volunteers arrived at training facilities across the American Southwest, officers noticed something that had nothing to do with linguistics. A small percentage of these men, perhaps 1 in 20, demonstrated abilities that defied conventional explanation. During night navigation exercises, they moved through pitch darkness without hesitation, as if the absence of light meant nothing to them. They detected hidden observers at distances that should have been impossible. They predicted enemy movements with accuracy that seemed almost supernatural. The Army conducted classified tests. The fragments of documentation that have surfaced over the decades paint a disturbing picture. One report describes a Comanche private who located concealed personnel at over 800 yards in dense forest. Another documents a corporal who predicted simulated enemy patrol movements with 97% accuracy over 2 weeks. The military attributed these abilities to superior cultural training and genetic adaptation. They had no idea they were dealing with something far older and far more dangerous than enhanced human capability. They had stumbled upon men who carried predator instincts that belonged to a time before civilization, before agriculture, before humans learned to fear the dark, because darkness was where they did their best work. Among these gifted soldiers was one whose abilities made even his fellow Comanches uncomfortable. His name doesn't matter now because the man who entered the war would not be the thing that emerged from it. What matters is what he could do. By age 7, he tracked rabbits across rocky ground where they left no visible prints. By 12, he sensed rattlesnakes before they were close enough to strike. By 16, he had developed a reputation that made grown warriors avoid eye contact. The elders whispered that he carried the gift of the crow, the ability to smell death itself, not metaphorically, literally. He claimed he could detect when living creatures were approaching their end, a sickness in the blood, a weakness in the heart, an odor of decay that preceded actual death by hours or even days. When this soldier completed a live fire training exercise in half the expected time, moving through simulated chaos as if he knew exactly where every shot would come from before it was fired, his instructor asked him a question that would be referenced in dozens of classified documents. "How did you know where my men were positioned?" The soldier's answer was simple and absolutely chilling. "I could smell them, sir. They smelled like they were already dead." The Army didn't send him to join the code talkers. They sent him somewhere else entirely, to a unit that didn't officially exist. A unit composed of indigenous soldiers whose abilities couldn't be explained by any training manual or scientific theory. They called themselves the Ghost Walkers. Their mission was to operate behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence and eliminating high-value targets. They would work in 2-man teams, carrying minimal equipment, relying entirely on their supernatural tracking abilities to survive in territory crawling with enemy soldiers. Their first major operation came in North Africa in late 1942. A German reconnaissance patrol was carrying encryption equipment that Allied intelligence desperately wanted. 12 men, heavily armed, moving through terrain that offered almost no cover. Conventional forces couldn't intercept them without alerting larger German units. 2 ghost walkers tracked that patrol for 18 hours across open desert. They moved at night and buried themselves in sand during the day, breathing through hollow reeds, remaining absolutely motionless for hours at a time while German boots passed within feet of their hiding spots. The attack came just before dawn when human alertness is at its lowest. It lasted less than 90 seconds. 11 men died without waking. The 12th, the signals officer, was taken alive. When Allied intelligence interrogated him, the technical information he provided was valuable, but it was his description of the attack that drew the most attention from military analysts. He said he felt something change in the air around him while he slept. Not a sound, not a movement, just a presence, a weight in the darkness. He opened his eyes and saw a figure standing over him, face painted with symbols he didn't recognize, eyes reflecting light like an animal's eyes, teeth that seemed too sharp to be human. The officer tried to scream, but no sound came out. He tried to reach for his weapon, but his body wouldn't respond. He could only lie there paralyzed, watching as the figure leaned close and whispered something in a language that felt ancient beyond measure. Then everything went black. When he regained consciousness, he was bound and gagged in an Allied camp 30 miles away. He had no memory of being transported, and for the rest of his life, he insisted that what attacked his patrol wasn't human. It was something wearing human skin. This is where things get interesting, because we're not just talking about skilled soldiers anymore. We're talking about psychological warfare on a level that the modern military still doesn't fully understand. The Germans called them Schattenjäger, the shadow hunters. Italian soldiers called them I demoni della notte, the demons of the night. Rommel himself allegedly issued a standing order. Any soldier who captured or killed a shadow hunter would receive immediate promotion and significant cash reward. The order acknowledged that these hunters operated in pairs and warned that engaging one meant the other was certainly nearby, waiting to strike. It recommended immediate withdrawal and reinforcements upon any sign of shadow hunter activity. But here's the thing about recommendations. They're worthless when you're dealing with predators who don't want to be found. The shadow hunters left no tracks. They made no sound. They appeared from nowhere and vanished just as completely. German soldiers who went looking for them simply disappeared. Their bodies were sometimes found days later, arranged in spiral patterns that seemed designed to maximize psychological impact on whoever discovered them. And the bodies themselves told a story that military coroners found deeply unsettling. Each soldier killed with a single wound, placed with surgical precision, designed to cause maximum pain before death. The survivors, the handful of German soldiers who encountered shadow hunters and lived, all told the same story despite coming from different units and never communicating with each other. They described a feeling of being watched by something not quite human, a presence in darkness that seemed to absorb light and sound, and they all described the same phenomenon, a smell, a sweet, sickly odor that filled the air before an attack, the smell of death coming for them on 2 legs. Now I need you to pause this video and do something for me. If this story is affecting you, if you're feeling that tightness in your chest that comes from hearing something that rings true on a level deeper than logic, I need you to hit the like button. I need you to share this video. These stories matter. These histories matter. The men who fought in these shadows deserve to be remembered, and the only way that happens is if you help spread this to people who need to hear it. Do it now, before you forget. The invasion of Sicily in July 1943 marked the beginning of the Ghost Walkers' European campaign. The program expanded to 8 two-man teams operating across the Italian theater, but something was changing in the most effective of these hunters. His partner noticed it first and filed a report that would become one of the most studied documents in the classified history of the program. The report stated that this soldier was becoming increasingly detached from reality. He would stop mid-mission and stare at nothing for minutes at a time. When asked what he was looking at, he said he was watching them die. Not enemy soldiers, everyone. He said he could see the death waiting for every living thing, could see how and when each person would meet their end, and the visions were getting stronger. His sense of smell had become so acute he could track individuals by scent from miles away. He could hear heartbeats through walls. He could sense human presence in complete darkness from distances exceeding a quarter mile. And most disturbingly, he had developed what his partner called the stare. When this soldier looked at someone with the stare, they froze, not metaphorically, literally. Their bodies stopped responding to commands. Their voices stopped working. They became paralyzed prey waiting to be killed. The incident that forced military command to confront what they were dealing with occurred near Salerno in September 1943. The hunter and his partner encountered a German patrol that included a high-ranking SS officer transporting documents with defensive position plans. The partner wanted to observe and report so a larger force could intercept. The hunter disagreed. He said he could smell something different on the SS officer. Years of murder compressed into a single overwhelming stench. Women, children, people who couldn't fight back. The layered scent of someone who had killed many times and would kill again. Against his partner's objections, the hunter engaged the patrol alone. What Allied troops found the following day stretched across nearly 100 yards of forest floor, bodies arranged in a pattern, each soldier killed with a single wound, but the wounds were placed with surgical precision, designed to cause maximum pain before death. The SS officer had been kept alive the longest. His face was frozen, in an expression of such absolute terror that the soldiers who found him refused to look at it directly. Carved into the officer's chest in letters 2 inches deep was a single word in the Comanche language. The word meant hunter. When the soldier returned to Allied lines, he was covered in blood that wasn't his own. His eyes were completely black. The whites had disappeared entirely, leaving only pupils that seemed to absorb light like holes in reality. He walked past sentries without acknowledging their challenges. He walked through the camp without responding to anyone. He walked until he reached his tent, then collapsed and didn't move for 3 days. The military's response was swift. He was removed from combat duty and transferred to a secure facility in England for study. The official explanation was combat fatigue. The true purpose was to determine whether his abilities could be understood and potentially replicated. The tests were extensive and often brutal. Sensory deprivation, extreme temperatures, experimental drugs. Through it all, he remained cooperative and unnervingly calm. Too calm, according to the doctors. The lead psychiatrist documented genuine, measurable sensory abilities far beyond normal human capacity. The soldier could detect scents at concentrations below standard human thresholds. He could identify individuals by smell alone from samples collected days earlier, and he could indeed sense proximity to death. When a laboratory rat was scheduled for euthanasia, he identified which rat would die hours before the procedure. He did the same with a terminal patient in a nearby hospital ward. But it was the soldier's explanation of his abilities that disturbed the psychiatrist most. He said his people had always known about such gifts. They weren't genetic accidents. They were inheritances, connections to something that existed long before humans walked the earth. Something that hunted when the world was young and never stopped hunting, even after its physical form faded. He called it the old hunter, a spirit living in the blood of certain Comanche families. It slept most of the time. Generations could pass without it waking. But when it found a suitable host, someone whose soul resonated with its ancient hunger, it would stir. And once fully awake, it would never sleep again. He said each kill fed the spirit, each death made it stronger, and now it was almost fully awake, almost in complete control. He could feel it looking out through his eyes, thinking with his thoughts, using his body as a vessel for hunger without limit or end. Soon there would be nothing left of the man, only the old hunter wearing his skin. The psychiatrist asked what would happen then. The soldier smiled. It wasn't a human smile. Then it will hunt. That is all it knows. It will hunt until there's nothing left to kill. The psychiatrist recommended permanent confinement and immediate program termination. His recommendations were overruled. The war was reaching a critical phase. The invasion of France was imminent. The military wasn't willing to give up its most effective, unconventional asset based on what they dismissed as superstitious beliefs. The hunter was returned to active duty in May 1944, 1 month before D-Day. The invasion of Normandy began on June 6, 1944. While the world remembers beaches and paratroopers and naval bombardment, almost no one remembers the shadow war fought in the forests behind German lines. A war without rules, without mercy. A war that left scars on the land that have never fully healed. The hunter was inserted 3 days before the main invasion as part of an advance team tasked with disrupting communications and creating chaos in rear areas. He would operate alone, a single predator loose in a forest full of prey. His first target was a German signal station coordinating defensive operations throughout the sector. Intelligence estimated at least 50 soldiers with heavy weapons and fortified positions protected it. The hunter found it on the second night. What happened there was reconstructed from German records captured after the war and testimony from a single survivor, a radio operator who hid in a supply closet when the attack began and remained there for 18 hours until American forces arrived. According to his account, the attack began just after midnight. First sign of trouble. The guard dogs didn't bark. They whimpered, then went silent. When soldiers checked on them, they found the animals cowering in kennels, shaking, staring at something in darkness the soldiers couldn't see. The searchlights went out next, one by one, as if something moved around the perimeter, cutting power lines in sequence. Generators wouldn't start. Batteries drained, every backup system failed simultaneously. Then screaming began. The operator couldn't see what was happening, only hear it. Gunfire, shouting, and underneath it all, a sound he'd never heard before. Low, rhythmic chanting in a language that bypassed his ears and resonated directly in his skull. The words meant nothing, but the feeling they carried was unmistakable. Hunger. Ancient, bottomless hunger that had waited for this moment for a very long time. The gunfire lasted 4 minutes, then silence. The operator heard footsteps moving through the farmhouse, slow, deliberate, checking each body. The footsteps stopped outside his closet. He held his breath. A shadow blocked the light beneath the door. Then a voice like gravel scraping bone. "I know you're there, little rabbit. I can hear your heart beating. I can smell your fear. It tastes like honey." The operator couldn't respond. His body stopped obeying commands. He could only sit in darkness, waiting to die. But death didn't come. The shadow moved away. The footsteps receded. Silence returned. When American forces arrived the next afternoon, they found 49 German soldiers dead, arranged in a spiral pattern radiating from the farmhouse center. Each killed with a single wound from something that left marks Army coroners had never seen. Carved into the wooden floor were ancient Comanche hunting markers, signs left by a predator warning others this territory had been claimed. This was just the beginning. Over following weeks, the hunter moved through occupied France like a plague given human form. He struck positions thought secure. He eliminated officers whose deaths threw divisions into confusion. He appeared and disappeared with randomness that made prediction impossible and defense futile. The German High Command deployed their best trackers, hunter-killer teams of veterans who'd fought partisans in the East. None returned. Their bodies were found days or weeks later, always in those same spiral patterns, always marked with those same ancient symbols. One German general offered 100,000 Reichsmarks for the hunter's capture or confirmed kill. The reward was never collected. Instead, the general became a target. His staff car was ambushed on a road swept for mines and declared secure hours earlier. Driver and 3 guards killed instantly. The general found alive but unresponsive, eyes open but seeing nothing, mouth moving but making no sound. He remained in that state 6 days before dying in a military hospital. Doctors found no physical injuries, no evidence of poison or disease. They concluded he'd been frightened to death. His heart gave out under weight of terror exceeding human capacity to endure. By August 1944, German forces in France had developed an unofficial protocol. If patrols found spiral patterns or hunting symbols, withdraw immediately and report to command. If soldiers heard chanting, fall back to fortified positions and wait for daylight. If anyone actually saw the hunter, surrender immediately. Surrender wasn't guaranteed to save them, but it was their only chance. Official records state the hunter was killed in action April 15, 1945, during operations near Kolditz in eastern Germany. His body was reportedly recovered and buried in a military cemetery in France, but military documents declassified in the 1990s revealed no body was ever recovered. The death certificate was created to close the file on an asset that had become too dangerous to acknowledge. The hunter simply disappeared from official records as completely as he disappeared into that German forest. There have been sightings over decades, reports most dismiss as folklore. A figure matching his description allegedly seen during the Korean War in mountains north of Chosin Reservoir. Similar reports from Vietnam, Central America, the Balkans, Afghanistan. Wherever American forces have fought, whispers of a shadow hunting in darkness, a presence the enemy fears more than any weapon. Some researchers believe he's still alive, that whatever possessed him sustained his body far beyond natural lifespan, that he wanders from conflict to conflict, feeding the endless hunger. Others believe he died long ago, but the thing inside him didn't, that it found new hosts over years, continues moving warrior to warrior, generation to generation, waking in those whose souls resonate with its ancient hunger. But here's what matters more than whether one soldier survived or became legend. Here's the truth this story reveals about psychological warfare, about fear, about what happens when you face an enemy that operates beyond your understanding of reality. The Germans weren't just fighting skilled soldiers. They were fighting men who carried something primal, something that bypassed rational thought and struck directly at the ancient parts of the human brain that remember when we were prey. That's psychological warfare at its purest. Not propaganda, not intimidation tactics, but the activation of instinctive terror that lives in every human being. Those spiral patterns weren't random. They were messages written in a language older than words. They said, "A superior predator has claimed this territory. You are not safe here. You will never be safe here." And the German soldiers understood that message on a level deeper than conscious thought, the same way a deer understands when a wolf is watching from the trees. This is what modern militaries still don't fully grasp. You can have superior technology, better training, more resources, but if your enemy can make you feel like prey, if they can activate that primal fear response, they've already won half the battle. Your hands shake. Your judgment fails. You make mistakes. And in war, mistakes are measured in body counts. The Ghost Walkers understood this instinctively because it was part of their cultural heritage. Their ancestors had used psychological warfare for centuries, not through conscious strategy, but through the natural expression of who they were. When Comanche warriors appeared on the horizon, their enemies didn't just see soldiers. They saw death coming on horseback, inevitable and unstoppable. That reputation was a weapon more powerful than any rifle. The U.S. military tried to weaponize that heritage, to bottle that psychological impact and deploy it strategically. And for a time, it worked brilliantly. German soldiers would rather retreat than face the shadow hunters. Officers would rather surrender than be captured by them. The mere possibility of their presence changed enemy behavior across entire sectors. But there's a cost to becoming a weapon. There's a price for channeling something primal and ancient. Not every soldier who served in the Ghostwalker program paid that price, but some did. Some found that once you open the door to that hunting instinct, once you give yourself permission to become a pure predator, it's very difficult to close that door again. The gift becomes a curse. The weapon turns on its wielder. This is the final lesson of the Comanche hunters, and it's one that applies far beyond military operations. We all have darkness inside us. We all have the capacity for violence, for cruelty, for becoming predators of one kind or another. And sometimes that capacity is necessary. Sometimes survival demands that we access those primal instincts. But if we're not careful, if we don't maintain something to hold on to, something greater than the hunt itself, we risk losing ourselves entirely to that darkness. The hunter who became legend, who may or may not still walk this earth, serves as a warning. He was extraordinarily effective. He was a military asset beyond measure. But the cost of that effectiveness was everything that made him human. He became what he hunted. He became the thing that frightened him in his own nightmares. Psychological warfare cuts both ways. When you weaponize fear, when you become the monster in your enemy's mind, you risk becoming that monster in reality. The Germans feared the shadow hunters because those hunters had embraced something inhuman. But embracing the inhuman means sacrificing the human, and that's a trade that can never be reversed. So tonight, as you lie in your bed in whatever corner of the world you're watching from, remember this: the most effective psychological warfare isn't about making your enemy fear you. It's about maintaining your own humanity while doing inhuman things. It's about accessing the predator when necessary and putting it back in its cage when the job is done. The soldiers who survived the Ghostwalker program weren't the ones with the strongest gifts. They were the ones who remembered they were men first and weapons second. The hunter is still out there, in one form or another. Maybe as a man who refuses to die. Maybe as a spirit seeking new hosts. Maybe just as a legend that grows more terrifying with each retelling. But the real hunter, the one you need to worry about, isn't in the forests of Europe or the mountains of Afghanistan. It's inside every person who's ever felt that surge of power that comes from making others afraid. That rush of dominance that comes from being the predator instead of the prey. Keep that hunter on a leash. Remember what you're fighting for. Remember who you were before the war, whatever war that might be. Because the truest victory in psychological warfare isn't defeating your enemy. It's surviving with your soul intact. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it gave you that uncomfortable feeling that comes from hearing truth wrapped in legend, do me one final favor. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me what you think. And subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep digging up these buried histories, these uncomfortable truths, these stories that reveal who we really are when the civilized veneer is stripped away. The hunt never ends, but neither does the fight to remain human while hunting. That's the real war. That's the battle that matters, and it's one we all have to fight every single day. Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant. Stay human. And remember that the greatest victory is not in becoming the most feared predator, but in knowing when to sheath your claws and walk away.